Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on this Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this Christmas Eve Tuesday?
Happy Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. Happy holidays to everybody.
Indeed. No days off.
No days off, but
even though we took a day off on Friday or Tuesday.
We enjoy this, so it's not like it's work.
That's true. We got a lot to talk about today. A lot of NFL games to get into, even though we're getting into a couple big ones here. Especially, we're going to keep this, we're going to try at least, we have one story that's a bit rough, thanks to one quarterback in particular for a New York sports team, always trying to make things somber and depressing, I would say. But we're trying to keep things in the spirit of the holiday season joyous. Let's say that. So let's start with this. When the Lions get their 8th 30-plus point victory, this time over the Chicago Bears in a 34-17 victory. Down David Montgomery. Didn't matter. Jahmyr Gibbs stepped up in a big way. 23 carries, 109 yards, along with a touchdown. Jared Goff, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Big quarterback rating. Scale of 0 to 100 of 79.8. That's massive. He also had a 137 quarterback rating. So I'm curious. We talked about this on Friday about how because of having 21 players on IR, the Super Bowl chances for the Lions have diminished a decent amount. Now they're third and sometimes, depending on the sportsbook, even fourth in Super Bowl odds. So my question to you is, does this massive 17-point win over the Chicago Bears matter at all or relieve any concerns you had about the Lions potentially making the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think the bigger news here is that the Eagles lost, right? So the Eagles lost. That gave their chances of getting the 1 seed almost impossible. The Lions have a very good chance to get the 1 seed. That's what they really need. They need that week off to get some of their players a little more healthy, given they got over 20 players on IR. It's incredible the amount of injuries they've had, and they've still been able to win these games. They destroyed the Bears 34-17. They were up 27-14 in at the end of the first half. It was not really even that close. I mean, you mentioned Goff's statistics look very good in that game. He had 3 TDs. Williams played okay too, actually. Caleb Williams, 26 of 40, 334 yards and 2 TDs. But the Bears, as I actually predicted early in the season, they're going nowhere. We're going to talk a little more about that in a few minutes. I think the situation for the Lions to get the 1 seed, the simplest route is just to beat the 49ers and beat the Vikings. That would get them in. If they just keep winning, there's nobody that can take it away from them. Or they could beat the Vikings, beat the 49ers, and the Packers beat the Vikings. And the Packers beat the Vikings. That's another route they could get in. I think their biggest challenge is the Vikings, who also have a 13-2 record right now. Pretty impressive for the Vikings this year to do that with Sam Darnold as their quarterback. I actually thought they would get beat this past weekend by the Seahawks, who really needed that game badly. And we're playing it at home, and it was a close game, but the Vikings wound up winning it. If they beat the Packers and the Lions, then they get the 1 seed. If they beat the Lions and the Eagles lose to the Cowboys or the Giants, then they could also get it. The Packers, they don't really have a chance. They're at 11-4, although they're a very dangerous-looking playoff team. And the Eagles, as I mentioned, 12-3. They got to beat the Cowboys and Giants. The Lions have to lose to the 49ers and the Vikings have to beat the Packers. That doesn't seem like that's likely. So I think the Lions have a good shot here. It's really between them and the Vikings. They hold the tiebreakers over the Eagles and the Vikings. So they look like a good shot to make it. I think they'll beat the Vikings. I think they'll beat the 49ers pretty handily. The 49ers really a shell of what we expected them to be and what they've shown they can be. They've really played poorly lately, and Brock Purdy too, not looking like a $60 million quarterback by any stretch. I think it will be an exciting game, that last game of the season, the Vikings and the Lions. Let's see who comes out on top in that game.
Well, I'll make it easier for you. If the Packers beat the Vikings this upcoming week, it's essentially done with.
Yeah.
Because the Lions would have the tiebreaker. So if the Packers beat the Vikings, it's a done deal, at least in the NFC North. And that's how the Lions could clinch the NFC North with just a win, or they could even lose because they play the Vikings anyway. And even if they lose that game, let's say that that final game, same record, and the Vikings still win, the Lions would still retain that one spot in the NFC North because they have a better division record, they have a better conference record, they basically have every single initial tiebreaker that you need, and they would be 500 in the head-to-head play. So the one seed for me, that had been specifically because the Eagles actually got upset by the Washington Commanders when Kenny Pickett was out there. Jalen Hurts got a concussion and was out for the game. That was massive. That was the one major obstacle in their way because division-wise, the Vikings will have a very difficult time to take over that number one spot in the division, which then means because they have the same exact record of 13-2, they would also get the number one seed in the NFC. So for that Eagles loss, that's all the Lions needed. That was really the only competition because they have essentially every major tiebreaker the Lions do over the Vikings. So unless they start losing out, which I can't really see because this was a massive victory in my eyes. This was a very, very crucial victory for the Lions just because this is what you needed. I've been saying for weeks now, once everybody seemed to be dropping like flies, that the number one seed, the only team that desperately needs the one seed in the NFL is the Detroit Lions because they are so banged up. Some of the major key players, offense and defense. Obviously, we know David Montgomery on the offense. He's going to be out with he has an MCL sprain or tear, something like that. Apparently, it's not season-ending. You got a second opinion, whatever the case may be. Defensively, you're out a bunch of guys. I mean, we're talking about you're going on your fifth and sixth and sometimes seventh string defensive backs. That's going to be an issue for you, especially late in the playoffs, if you do make it that far. But going up against the 49ers, who just got beaten up by the Miami Dolphins and looked like a team that absolutely gave up, and especially Kyle Shanahan saying, yeah, well, we came into the week kind of knowing, because we know numbers, that we were essentially out of the playoffs anyway. That's I mean, what kind of message are you sending as a head coach? So I expect, even though you're going to San Francisco, the Lions will do perfectly fine on Monday Night Football. And then essentially that locks up the number one seed for you because I think the Packers will give the Vikings a run for their money, which should be interesting. But does this alleviate my fears or my concerns about the Lions' Super Bowl chances? No, because the players are still hurt. The players still have massive injuries. So if players don't get healthy, what's the difference? Yeah, you got a nice win over the Chicago Bears, who are now on a 9-game losing streak, and we're gonna talk about them next. But they've gotten worse since Matt Eberflus left. Remember how everyone was like, "Fire Eberflus, bad decision. The offense is terrible. The defense isn't great." Well, I'm gonna bring up some numbers in a couple minutes here. The numbers are worse offensively, worse defensively. It's funny how that is. You think the head coach is the issue, and so you fire him mid-season, which, by the way, that's the first time in over 100 years, I think it's the first time maybe in franchise history, that the Bears decided to fire someone mid-season, and it somehow didn't fix any problems, maybe because it's not necessarily a head coaching issue. So, just going to throw that out there. But I was actually impressed that the Lions actually blew them out. I had the Bears covering the 6.5-point spread because I looked at Thanksgiving and I realized that it was a 3-point game that could have been a tie game going into overtime, and who knows what would happen in overtime if Caleb Williams could get a playoff, his head coach and his teammates on the sidelines screaming at him to get the playoff. So I was impressed they were able to get this win, but it was against a reeling team. It was against a team that's given up not only just on the season, but it seems like on the coaching staff, on the ownership, on the entire 2024-2025 season. So this is not a big-time win in my eyes. It's a division opponent. It's an inferior opponent. The Lions did their job, and I think that's the biggest thing here. They did their job. The defense did a perfectly nice job at disrupting Caleb Williams, and something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later is Caleb Williams, compared to some of the other rookie quarterbacks, he's very animated. I don't know if this is exactly the right word, but he shows his emotions a lot on the field. Incomplete pass. Bad throw. It's an incomplete pass. It's a bad throw. Move on. Drake May's not doing that. Jaden Daniels isn't doing that. Bo Nix isn't doing that. Maturity issue, maybe? I don't know. But to answer the question, this does not alleviate any fears for me for them, potentially making the Super Bowl.
Okay. So We'll see what happens with the last two games of the season. I think that Vikings-Lions game at the end of the season is going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to that. I think that division, wow, the NFC North, it used to be kind of the winner of the division came out and there wasn't any wild cards. But now look at it. Lions, Vikings, and Packers all have locked up a playoff spot already. So,
I mean, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Packers look dominant. We're going to talk about them later on in the show. The Bears are terrible, and the Vikings, they're the shock of the NFL this season. So
yeah.
We'll wait and see what happens when it comes to the playoff time. But no, I'm still at that 35%. Actually, no, what I said 80. No, I said 60% chance that they make it. And because they were my Super Bowl pick, so I still got faith in them. This was a good win, but to me, it didn't really mean much because the Bears are a terrible team. And speaking of the Bears, let's jump into our next topic because the Bears have now lost 9 straight games. They started off 4-2 and have lost the next 9 games to fall to 4-11. You have an infamous pick that did go viral of you basically saying they lose the last 8 games of the season, starting with the Green Bay Packers in Week 12, and then they just keep losing and losing and losing. Or excuse me, Week 11, and they just keep losing game after game after game. Now, up to that point where people got mad at you and frustrated that you said they lose their last 8 games, you actually had them at 5 wins. They're at 4 wins right now. So you actually are more positive than they actually are.
Yeah.
So I want to get into it. You got a lot of hate for this take. So I want to know, how do you feel about your prediction today on Christmas Eve?
Well, I don't want to say I told you so, but the numbers bear out my prediction here. It looks like the Bears will go 4-13 because I don't think they're going to beat the Seahawks, who they have at home, or I don't think they're going to beat the Packers at the Packers in the last game of the season. The Seahawks need the win badly, and the Packers want it too. So, and I don't think the Bears have the team to beat either of those teams. Their offensive line is horrible. Their coaching staff now decimated by the firings. First, the offensive coordinator by Eberflus, and then Eberflus being fired. Thomas Brown stepping up from who was an offensive, a passing coordinator. I'm not sure exactly what that is. There was another passing coach who stepped up to be the OC after Shane Waldron was fired. And then the defensive play calling went over to Washington. So, it's like a revolving door, a musical chairs with the Bears and their coaching staff, just horrible. And showing up on game day with they don't seem to have a game plan that really is designed to beat the team that they're playing or even be competitive. And the players, maybe they've given up. I mean, they don't know who their head coach is going to be next year. I'm not sure about Poles, who is still on as GM, but has made some rumblings behind the scenes that he's unhappy that he's reporting to the president of the Bears operations instead of the owner, because he was reporting directly to the owner, and that's not the case now. So it's a mess there, and I didn't expect it actually to be this bad. I thought they'd win 5 games. Looks like they're only going to win 4.
Well, I'll say that I had them going 7-10. I was a little bit more optimistic than you were.
A lot more.
Yeah, I mean,
look at that. That's 3 more games.
Well, in reality, but at the time it was only 2 more, and I thought that might be, that might get a little bit of hate, but apparently I was wrong. Because you were dead on accurate, and I'll give you your props where props is due. You had them going 5-12 the entire season, and people were outraged by that. No, but statement.
More importantly, I had them losing out the last 8 games of the season, and that looks like that's going to happen.
Well, they've lost the last they lost the last 9, so they could lose the last 11 games of the season when it's all said and done. So I'll give you your props. But I think it's honestly even worse than people realize, because I thought Matt Eberflus should have been fired before this season. So you bring in a new head coach, you have a new OC. I don't think Shane Waldron would have been the OC anyway, but you bring in a new OC, you bring in a new head coach, and you draft a brand new quarterback. I think that's a good idea. We just saw it, and right now it's a sophomore slump, but I think the DeMeco Ryans, new head coach, new OC, and new quarterback, it worked for them because they actually had a very good head coach, and you had an opportunity, reportedly, to sign Jim Harbaugh to be your head coach. And the big statement now, you look at the Chargers and look how efficient they are. It's like, why the hell didn't we do it? Why? What was the reason for that? And you obviously stuck with Matt Eberflus, but people were saying that Matt Eberflus was the main problem, and I was like, well, yeah, no, he definitely is not a good head coach and probably should have been fired. But this team, the quarterback play has been inconsistent at best. You have no offensive line. Your running game is not that great. And your defense, people were going into this season saying, we have the number one defense in the second half of 2023-2024 season. Okay, but this is 2024-2025 season. Yes, that did happen, and that could give us little pointers here and there about what the Bears could look like, but it's a whole nother season. So I'm not really gauging, oh yeah, the Bears are going to have the number one defense in 2024. I'm not doing that. But when it came to firing Matt Eberflus, and this is something that we've seen this season already when it comes to blaming the head coach, firing him, and then expecting the problems to shrink or go away, when it comes to the Bears, they've gotten worse. So this is the Bears' first 12 weeks, and then the last 3. The last 3 weeks, they've had Thomas Brown as their interim head coach. The numbers are worse. Shockingly worse. Drastically worse. They were 4-8 in the first 12 weeks, and they've lost the last 3. They averaged just about 20 points per game, and now they average 14 per game. The total yards is just under 300 in the first 12 weeks, and then the last 3, 276. But here's the thing, the defensive numbers. Total yards allowed per game, 344.5 through the first 12 weeks, 418.7 in the last 3. And then the points allowed per game, 20 points allowed per game, and then 34 points allowed per game. The defense is worse. The offense is worse. Everything is worse. The culture seems to be worse. The only thing that is positive is that you're going to get a new head coach. You're going to get a new OC. That's what my guess would be. Mm-hmm. You still have Caleb Williams on his rookie deal. You have DJ Moore for the foreseeable future. You have Rome Odunze on his rookie deal. You have some pieces in play, but the culture, the thought process, the winning dynamic does not exist. It is either terrible, it's a losing culture, and the morale is dead inside. Caleb Williams, moaning and groaning every time he throws an incomplete pass. Yeah, show emotion, that's great, but look at the rookies around you. Read the room. That's what I think. Read the room. Your other rookies are not, basically sobbing on the sideline after a bad drive. They're focused on getting out, and completing the next drive. He looks tired. I think that's what it is. He looks tired. It's been a long season, high expectations. I kind of feel bad for him. But when people, yell at me and go into this season saying generational talent, best prospect that we've seen in a long time, his comp is Patrick Mahomes, then what expectation level should I set? I'm not going to set Josh Rosen. I'm not going to set, I'm not going to set Mac Jones level. I'm being like, okay, if your comp is Mahomes, show me a level of Mahomes. And I've seen inconsistent play. I've seen a lot of incomplete passes, overthrows, underthrows, too far left, too far right. And now I see sort of lack of maturity after an incomplete pass.
Mm-hmm. Well, he did pretty well last week, actually. 334 yards, 2 TDs, no turnovers. That's pretty good. And his completion percentage was pretty good. So I think he's played pretty well, actually, in a very tough situation. I think that the comparison to Mahomes is, in a way, not fair. Mahomes didn't play his rookie year. He got in there at the end there when
played well,
and when Alex Smith got hurt. So he had the time to watch and learn, and then he got in there, and he's great, no doubt. And that's a very high bar to set to compare anybody to him. But I'd say Williams, it's a strong rookie year, actually, for him. Given all the coaching turnover, the offensive line being a sieve, the leadership there is poor. Be interesting to see who they get for a head coach. I think someone like Mike Vrabel, who's going to have probably be able to pick from 2 or 3 teams at least, Would he pick the Bears? I'm not so sure.
I don't think the Bears are going to choose him. I really think that the Bears are going to go offensive. The offensive route. And my guess is Ben Johnson is probably their
well. They're going to try to get him. Ben Johnson might not decide he doesn't want to do that. He'll have other options too.
Well, according to ESPN, this is a quote I'm reading right now. Sources confirmed to ESPN that the Lions' offensive coordinator is a name the Bears expect to interview for their head coaching vacancy. And then they go on about what he did, recently, the 400-plus yard offense for the third time in 4 games. Apparently, Ben Johnson has praised Caleb Williams for how how the ball whistles when he throws it. Again, he can throw it hard, but I care about accuracy.
I can't believe it whistling.
I care more about accuracy than I care about, arm strength, because I want it to get there nicely. I don't care if it gets there 75 miles an hour. I want it to actually hit the guy's hands and be able to, generate some yardage.
To catch it.
Because we see what Joe Milton, everybody talked about how great Joe Milton's arm is, and we saw it in the preseason. He could throw it 60 yards, and it just seems like he flicks his wrist. But his big thing was lack of accuracy. Anthony Richardson, he has a great arm, phenomenal arm. He can't complete passes. He has one of the worst completion percentages for a starting quarterback in NFL history. So, yeah, great arm is one thing. I care more about accuracy. So that's my big thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Your prediction was better than spot on. You were ahead of the curve, I think.
It's nice to be right once in a while.
I
think that I'm not sure the Bears, they've had a very poor track record for a very long time, and they're kind of like the Jets. They're mired in a losing culture. I don't know how they can extract themselves from it. Getting a new head coach is a help. Maybe the GM too, and this president, the guy that's in the middle of it, Warren, who has upset the GM and said a bunch of things that seemed a little outlandish. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. I mean, the Bears are a different kind of ownership. They make their money just from the team. They don't have an owner that has a big industrial conglomerate that feeds all kinds of money into the organization. They're making their money just on the team. So it's harder for them to go out and sign a lot of big free agents and pay a lot of extra money because of their financial structure. So I don't know. I don't see the Bears going much anywhere, really. My prediction for them right now for next year isn't much better.
Really?
Yeah. We'll have to see who they get for a head coach, but maybe they have a lot of talent. They sure didn't show it much. I think Caleb Williams is a talent for sure. The wide receivers look pretty good on paper. Odunze is a young rising star, but they got to have an offensive line, and the defense after Eberflus was fired, and I think that was a mistake to fire him. It was an emotional decision after they booted the last play of the game and against the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. They fired him because it was an emotional decision. They shouldn't have done it. They should have looked. Who we got to replace him? Nobody. Thomas Brown?
Yeah.
He was the coordinator.
Passing game
coordinator.
Well, and then he was interim OC, and then he was interim head coach.
I mean, it was like he made a meteoric rise in like 3 weeks to being interim head coach. And look at the results. They're playing terrible.
Those are the results right there.
Look at that. 0-3.
Since Eberflus got
14 points a game. Yeah. And giving up 418 yards a game.
Yeah.
Terrible. Giving up 34 points a game. Yeah. It's awful.
Oh, it's bad.
It's awful.
The defense isn't living up to that standard that people love to talk about from last year. It's not living up to that. The running game with DeAndre Swift is basically nothing.
A bust.
But I don't necessarily blame DeAndre Swift because we just saw him with the Eagles put up a very nice performance
running behind a nice offensive line, one that's competent.
Right.
The Bears don't have that. I think.
That's what we said going into the season.
One plus for head coaching candidates for this job is the bar is pretty low. Right, the bar is set very low.
I actually
if you won 7 games next year, wow, you'd be considered a star.
I actually disagree with that because the Bears have had a losing culture for how long now? And as soon as they got Caleb Williams, they started making these free agent moves. All of a sudden, we had people saying playoffs, deep playoff run, Super Bowl appearance. So I don't actually agree with that. You're saying that this job would just be like, win 5 games, 6 games, and you're going to be good for year one? why would the expectations not, like, if you're Ben Johnson, you're coming, I think Ben Johnson's honestly, in that particular case, the worst one, because he is just part of an offense that's one of the craziest offenses we've seen in the NFL. So if you're going from the Detroit Lions offense, which already is stacked with a bunch of talent, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sonic and Knuckles, Jared Goff, Sam Laporta, Tim Patrick even, Jameson Williams, who had a phenomenal game this past week against the Bears, then I think the expectation is going to be through the roof for you, because you just did it with the Lions. And now we have Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Caleb Williams.
I think...
I know you're going to I think Keenan Allen you might need to re-sign, but the offensive line is something that they need to focus on heavily. The defense is bad. The defense is bad, but the offense is worse. They have the 31st total offense and the 26th ranked total defense. So the defense is terrible, but it's not as bad. The offense is a bit...
It'd be interesting to see how, if Ben Johnson winds up being picked by the Bears and he accepts the job, what kind of motivational skills he has. Because you look at Dan Campbell, he's a motivational guy.
Correct.
He's a charisma guy. He's someone who gets the team behind him. They buy into his philosophy. They like the fourth down. It shows he has confidence in the players to make those big plays. He's created a culture there that's Dan Campbell's culture. Can Ben Johnson do that with the Bears that have such a long history of being so inept? I don't know, and I think he'll think about that. Am I capable of doing that? I've got a good gig here with the Lions, man. Maybe I don't want to leave it, or maybe there's another team out there that looks better to me.
Well, I think that was his thought process this past season, where he could have gotten a job, but he decided to stay. I think when it comes to the Bears situation, I think the worst situation to be in is a first-time head coach there. That's where I think that there's more. You're set up more for failure than success, because you're going into a franchise that keeps losing, that has high expectations. It's kind of like the Jets 2.0 in a way. High expectations always disappoints. They've never had a 4,000-yard passer and never had a 30-touchdown thrower, and that will continue this season. Caleb Williams only has a little over 3,200 yards and only 19 touchdowns. He does have 5 interceptions, which that is impressive. That's the best thing Caleb Williams has done all season. Is the lack of interceptions. 5 picks to 19 touchdowns. Yeah. That's really
how many yards? He's run the ball quite well too, right? When he's scrambled,
he has 73 carries for 442 rushing yards.
Not bad.
That's not bad at all.
No, I think he's a rising talent. He's talented, and I think he'll calm down a little bit. After an incomplete pass, you don't have to go crazy about it. I mean, those things happen. I think he wants to win, obviously. I mean, he's a good person to build around for sure. He's got the right mindset and he has the talent. But the rest of the team, I mean, you don't do it with one guy. And the front office, man, there could be a big frustration for the head coach there with that dysfunction there. So I don't know. They have to fix those things.
I think you need a culture builder. I'm going Mike Vrabel today, tomorrow, and for the future, because.
Mike Vrabel, I thought you said you wouldn't go for him because he's a defensive-minded guy.
Yes, but he's not a first-time head coach.
Right.
They need a culture. Here's the thing. Hire a good OC. That's all you need to do. Hire a good OC. Because that's what the Eagles did.
You need a head coach, too.
Nick Sirianni does. He's supposed to be a locker room guy. What did he do? He hires a bunch of OCs. They've won their 4th OC in 4 years. If you're a walk-around guy, which Dan Campbell is, you got to be a great motivator. And I think that's the difference between a Nick Sirianni and a Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell creates a very positive culture where how many times have we heard locker room issues or rumored locker room issues with the Detroit Lions? At Dan Campbell, never. We've heard, 2 or 3 incidents with the Philadelphia Eagles when they're winning games. It's not like they're losing games. They're winning games and there's issues. So I think the Bears, and now this is the 3rd time I'm saying this on the show, they need a culture builder. Mm-hmm. And Mike Vrabel currently is the best culture builder that's available for the head coach.
He's a player's coach.
He is a player's coach. And what the Bears need is someone to be a player's coach. Being a first-time head coach in that job with those expectations, I can only imagine the amount of stress that's going to be put on you to take a Bears organization that has a history of losing, but has so much talent currently on the roster that even though they're used to losing, they expect you to turn it around. It's exactly like the Jets, except it is this season, because not only will the Jets have a new head coach, they'll have a new general manager as well. So the Bears right now, they're a talented team without any direction. It's also like the Chargers. On defense, you look at the players when Brandon Staley was there. The names on the defensive side were insane. Asante Samuel, Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. The list goes on. But yet they kept giving up the most yards in the first 3 years of Justin Herbert's career, the most in NFL history. They gave up the most points in the first 3 years of a quarterback's career in NFL history. But you look at the names, like, why are they didn't have a coach. Jim Harbaugh comes in, they're one of the top defenses in the NFL.
Even with their defense having quite a few injuries, too.
Right. So it's a situation that is very tricky for a first-time head coach, and I think it's going to be very tricky for any head coach to sort of, turn this ship around and say, you know what, we're on a winning trajectory. All right, we're going to take a very quick break, but coming up, Aaron Rodgers potentially calls out his star receiver, Garrett Wilson, and also calls out the rest of his team. What's new? As well as the Packers handed the Saints the first shutout of this NFL season. We'll talk about how far that they could go in this year's playoffs after clinching a playoff berth. We'll talk about that right after this short break.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on Christmas Eve, as well as have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I'm always joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of today's show, which is Aaron Rodgers. After losing to the Los Angeles Rams, and they've barely been able to find any victories. Their only victory in the last several weeks came against Mac Jones and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Great win, whoop-de-doo. Rodgers spoke in the post-game conference and kind of called out his team, as well as one particular player, it seems, because his reaction kind of makes it seem like he doesn't want to be there. So take a listen to Aaron Rodgers as well as Garrett Wilson post-game.
Well, I don't know I think we're kind of past the keeping the positive thing. I think it's just about perspective. Your perspective informs your truth, and your truth makes your reality. So the reality situation is what it is. But your perspective is something you can change every single day. So what you're focusing on is the most important thing now. It's not to change the reality of the situation, being 4-11 out of the playoffs, going into an unknown off season, but you got to figure out what it means to be a professional. I think that's an important part of building culture. For the last 2 weeks, we can really see who's on board moving forward and who is ready to get out.
Got to go out and put my best foot forward, and hope that things fall my way. I would love to be involved, love to make an impact on the game, but people see it differently than that's outside of my control. So just try and do what I can do.
So my question is, do you have any issue with Aaron Rodgers' comment?
Actually, I don't disagree with generally what he said. I think those are all true statements. Change your perspective is something you can change every day, every single day. That's true. I agree with that. That's not going to change the reality of the situation, being 4-11 out of the playoffs, going into an unknown off season, but where we got to figure out what it means to be a professional. That's an important part of building culture. I think those things are all true. Having him say it now after the way he's performed and the expectations that were there for him and the influence that he was allowed to have on the team makes it sound like he's a little bit sour grapes. And I think there's a hint in there that he's saying that some of his teammates have quit. And I think those two people in particular, Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, I think are two players he may be thinking about. Rodgers says, it's part of the game when you're in a situation where you're not going to make the playoffs and you still have games to play. I've been on a couple of teams where we were out of it, and it's interesting to watch the practice habits, the preparation habits. Hopefully we'll do the right thing that means a lot because everyone is watching, and there will be interesting conversations in the next couple of weeks. But just focus on the relationships we have with each other and try to finish this thing out like pros. And I think here he's trying to say, I want to be back. I want to come back to this team. And I think, I don't know, I heard a couple of weeks ago, Woody Johnson couldn't get him out of there fast enough. In fact, they were talking about letting him go before the end of the season. You haven't heard too much about that lately. I mean, he's had a couple of games now where throwing to Davante Adams, who can be back with the Jets next year. The connections look pretty good. He wants to be back with the Jets, I think, and that's kind of what he's trying to say here. Whether they want him back, it was clear they didn't for a while there. Now I'm not so sure. I don't know. They have no GM or head coach, so those leaders will figure out what's going to happen when they're picked. And there are big questions about who will be around in 2025. I think that's the big thing here. I'm not sure the last 2 weeks are going to matter all that much to that decision-making because it's going to be a new group of people that are making those decisions. And really, Aaron Rodgers is the first big decision the new GM and the head coach are going to have to make.
Well, I think when it comes to this situation, it is the person saying it that matters the most. Because he talks about, figure out what it means to be a professional and focusing on the right thing. Did he set an example this season in the offseason for mandatory minicamps when he was focusing on what matters most? Meaning, this is the first time you're healthy now. This is the first time you're going out there and you're going to be playing, for this season healthy. And he's focused during mandatory minicamps on going on an ayahuasca trip. Is that focusing on what matters? Is that focusing on the truth or whatever the philosopher Rodgers says? I think it's the wrong person saying it. And yeah, Garrett Wilson's pissed. I'd be pissed too. Because instead of focusing on me, who should be the star of the Jets moving forward, instead Rodgers has to bring over 4 of his buddies who he's focusing on. Early season, what was it a lot of? Allen Lazard. Focus a lot on Allen Lazard, who last year led the league in drop percentage. That's an issue. Also had a couple drops this season before getting hurt, and he was banged up this season. And then Davante Adams, Rodgers' key piece. The last year they were together. Really, the mantra was if he's going to be out there, I'm just going to close my eyes and throw it to him and see if he can make a play. And that happened in the playoff game against San Francisco. I picked the 49ers to win because I believed in Jimmy Garoppolo. I turned out to be right because in the first half it was a little bit scary because they were connecting and it was great. And then it was, okay, Rodgers keeps trying and trying and trying and it's not working. Go to somebody else. And it kind of fell flat. So Davante Adams was his key piece of that. And then the last season with the Packers, without Davante Adams, because he shipped him out there because he wanted $150 million over 3 years, fully guaranteed. Oh, the offense is worse. And Rodgers has his first double-digit interception year in several seasons. And now we take a look at Rodgers this season, and it's a lot of hit and miss with a lot of misses. Rodgers has been better the past few weeks, much better, and especially targeting Davante Adams, it's been great. But when the star of the Jets, because Davante Adams, if Rodgers leaves or retires or whatever, Davante Adams, we'll see a repeat performance of Davante Adams on the Jets. He will not be there next season, at least for the full season. He won't be there. Davante Adams will be gone because he has made every single move Davante Adams has made in the NFL has been to reunite with a friend. With a friend. You leave the Packers and you go over to the Raiders to play with your old college quarterback, Derek Carr, who then gets shipped out that season. And then you force your way to the Jets to go team up with Aaron Rodgers, who was your quarterback when you first got into the league. Davante Adams has never made a decision based on his own level of success. He hasn't made it because he wants to go win football games. He went to go chill with his buddies, to chill with his former college quarterback, to chill with his former NFL quarterback. So I fully expect Davante Adams to not be New York Jet next season because I don't think Rodgers is coming back. I don't think Woody Johnson wants him back. I think he'll take the dead cap or whatever bonus money that Rodgers is still owed. He'll take it as a slap on the wrist and move on because the general manager can look at the Jets and look at the rumors and look at the reports and look at everything and say, okay, why would I want players to come into this situation? Why would I want a young player to come into this situation? And you listen and you hear some of the players that Rodgers has played would say, we need to, be careful. We got to always make sure Rodgers is happy. We got to walk on eggshells and we're around him to make sure everything's great. Who would want to play for that team that has that as their quote-unquote leader? Rodgers is not aging well. He's just not. He's literally milk. He's milk when you leave it out. Brady, he's aging very well. I think Mahomes will age very well. I think there's a couple quarterbacks here that when they get into the later years of the NFL, they'll age very beautifully. Rodgers, it's kind of like hitting the side of a wall. It's coming off, it's dipping, like falling off a cliff. 90-degree angle, he's plummeting. Because not only is he not playing tremendously well, yes, he has moments like this game, and also a couple games like against Miami, where he does have nice games. Like against Jacksonville, he had a great game. But in the grand scheme of things, they have no culture. They have a toxic culture. Rodgers really is very self-centered because he hasn't played that well. And by the way, who fumbled in the fourth quarter when they were trying to drive and to put up more points? It was Aaron Rodgers, who has one of the worst red zone offenses. I'll give you the actual number. Who has the 24th ranked red zone offense in the NFL? The New York Jets, led by quarterback Aaron Rodgers. And their defense, by the way, we think their defense is worse. Technically, based on the numbers, they have the 6th ranked total defense in the NFL, while the 23rd ranked total offense. So, yes, Rodgers is not the biggest problem. The offensive line's not that great. At least it's worse than what we thought it would be. But he's a massive piece of their failures because he is the leader. He is the figurehead. He is the guy. He's the assistant general manager. He brought over a bunch of people. So, and if you're alienating your star receiver because you have been targeting Davante Adams at an insane clip the last 4 games, you have double-digit targets to Davante Adams. Meanwhile, Garrett Wilson the past 2 weeks has tied his season low, season second lowest and lowest for targets. So I kind of, because by the way, everything is actually going very right and also wrong because I think they're going to get off Rodgers. You bring in a new quarterback. But now a new general manager will need to determine who am I paying between Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. That's an issue. Then you're probably going to need to pay Will McDonald, who has performed very well. You're going to need to start paying some of your rookies here. At the time they were rookies, some of your young guys. Mm-hmm. And you're going to need to make some business decisions, as Antonio Pierce would say. And I think that maybe Garrett Wilson's making a business decision. Actually, I think it's more Rodgers making it for him by not targeting him. Oh. I think he wants to be targeted. I think he wants to perform very well. Yeah. It's just when you get targeted 6 times and have 3 catches, it's like...
Well, now there's competition from Davante Adams. Rodgers would prefer to throw it to him.
Because he's a security blanket. It's all about the numbers. And this is what I say, right? Nowadays, and if Rodgers keeps playing, I think this can only hurt his legacy case. What does Rodgers have now besides his touchdown to interception ratio? What's left?
There's one Super Bowl.
One Super Bowl, what, 11, 12, 13 years ago?
That. He has a lot of times being in the playoffs, getting his team to the playoffs.
But his record is not.
It's come up small in recent years.
They went 15-1 in 2011 and lost to the Giants in the divisional round. 15-1.
Yeah.
Like there's been a lot of moments where it's like the expectations for Rodgers are great. MVP season. What, 47 touchdowns to 6 picks or whatever? And he fails in the playoffs.
I think he wants to play next year. I think he wants to come back to the Jets to try to resurrect what turned out to be a bad situation because initially we were all told and everyone thought we have all the pieces. All we need is a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers is the guy who's coming in going to take us to the Super Bowl. And that's what they thought was going to happen. The first year he got hurt on play number 4 and was out for the whole year. This year he's there the whole year, and they played very poorly. So I think that you may be right that he's gone, but I think they're gonna think hard about it. I don't think they're gonna make a decision until they get a new head coach and new GM. And they have to think about, well, what do we do if we don't have Aaron Rodgers? Who's the quarterback going to be? Kirk Cousins? He's going to be available.
Sam Darnold.
I don't know if Sam Darnold will want to come back to the Jets. And if they brought him back and he played like he did when he was there before, then that will be a disaster. And they'll say that look at the Jets leadership again in the head office. They blew it again. So I'd be surprised if it's Sam Darnold. Who else would there be? Who else could be there?
Well, John, he was on a show, my brother John Harvey. He said maybe Geno Smith, trade for Geno Smith.
Geno Smith, another guy who
Former Jet.
does he want to come back to the Jets the way they treated him? They treated him terribly.
Well, I mean,
why would I? If I were Geno Smith,
Todd Bowles at the time
why
was
would
not a
I
great
want
head
to
coach.
come back there?
Todd Bowles,
I guess if he didn't have another option, then maybe he'd be considered.
Well, he does because he's still under contract with the Seahawks, but
for another year. I mean, he hasn't played that badly this year.
No, he hasn't.
Who
played
would the
poorly at all.
Seahawks replace him with? Who would they get? Sam Darnold?
Well, right now they have Sam Howell, who is terrible.
He's terrible. He was in there a little bit. Geno got banged up a little bit. He came in.
It was not good.
It was just horrible.
It was bad. It was very
horrible.
Bad. I think there's a shot that they could be drafting a quarterback in the near future, which I think is a smart idea.
Yeah, but a rookie, you're going to put a rookie out there? I don't know.
What with DK Metcalf, JSN, Tyler Lockett?
Why wouldn't you
Charbonnet,
use it? You're going to have high draft pick, draft an offensive lineman.
Well, no,
right? Draft an offensive lineman in the first round.
I want to make it very clear. My prediction is the Jets draft a quarterback. That's what I said, and y'all were like, "Well, I don't think they'll put a rookie out there for the Jets." I'm like, "Why not?" Yeah, you have Jordan Travis, but I think he's still recovering from his horrible injury that he suffered. He played for?
The
Florida
quarterback group this time around is not that great.
Correct.
So
unless you have a top,
why
2-3
wouldn't
pick,
you? Why wouldn't you turn Aaron Rodgers into a game manager, or draft an offensive lineman, use your or draft or trade down, and pick up more picks.
That's what
later
that is legitimately what my take was. I said you take your first round pick, drop lower in the first round. You could draft one of the mid tier quarterbacks in the first round anyway, or you could save him until the second round. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you need to draft a quarterback. I don't think Jordan Travis is going to take you anywhere that Rodgers couldn't. And I want to make and you know what's crazy about this? Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyle put up a better season, and Zach Wilson just in general, put up a better season than what everybody's calling a first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers, with better talent. Because Zach Wilson didn't have this offensive line. Zach Wilson had a banged up Breece Hall who didn't play really. Then you also by the way, you had Alan Lazard.
You only had one receiver. You really only had Garrett Wilson.
Well, last year Alan Lazard led the league in drop percentage, so you had a receiver who couldn't catch passes. You had a terrible offensive line.
Yeah.
And Zach Wilson did better than Rodgers did. And everybody said Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Fame. And I'm saying, well, shouldn't this affect that? I'm not saying that Rodgers isn't a Hall of Famer. You win 4 or 5 MVPs, you win a Super Bowl, yeah, you're probably going to make it to the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. But I'm taking a look at I'm taking a look at what have you done for me lately. And I'm saying, well, you're not playing well. It's embarrassing how bad you've been playing, and you have the reputation.
Hasn't played that bad the last 3 or 4 weeks. 3 or 4 weeks. He's played okay. I mean, he played well. Devontae Adams against the Jaguars? The Devontae Adams had a fantastic game.
12 targets, 9 catches, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's had at least one touchdown.
Not too bad. I mean, it took them a while to get back in the sync of things, and they've shown that they can do it. They can still do it. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers gets released.
By the way, in that time frame, they're 1-3.
If Aaron Rodgers is released by the Jets, what do you think? Does he retire?
Rodgers?
Yeah,
he should. He
should. But will he? I don't think so.
He's got a brand new series out. He's going to drag this out. He's got a brand new documentary, whatever you want to call it. He's going to drag it out. He's going to make it like he always did. Well, I don't know if I'm coming back. Nah, I'm 90% retired. I'm going to go into the darkness. I'm going to merge like a hobbit, and I'm going to be like, you know what? I want to go to the New York Jets. Meanwhile, you've already been traded because your general manager, Brian Gutekunst, was fed up with you. So go into a darkness retreat. Find your inner peace. Take a long time. Keep recording your documentary. I don't really care. But what I do care about is you're a toxic culture to a team that can't sustain someone like you. They need someone with a positive energy. Robert Saleh tried to bring that. He tried his very best, and Woody Johnson got fed up because he lost in horrible fashion.
There won't be a decision made until they hire a GM and a head coach.
Well, according to Rodgers, that could be January 6th as soon as the season ends, because reportedly they want to hire a GM very, very soon. So we could be seeing some movement being made very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll see.
And we will. All right, let's get to our final topic of today's show. The Packers handed the Saints a massive 34-0 shutout. It's the first shutout of this NFL season. And with that victory, they also clinch a playoff berth, joining the Lions, Washington Commanders, Vikings, along with the NFC, for teams that clinch the playoff berth. This is a massive win for them because they still have an opportunity to actually take over the number 1 seed if the Lions and Vikings and Eagles lose out, which also means they have an opportunity to take over the NFC North along with that. So this is a massive win for them. It was a dominating win. So I want to know, based on what you've seen from the Packers so far this season and sort of kind of keeping up with the rest of the massive victories in the NFC North, like the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings, each 13-2. How far do you think the Packers could get this season in the playoffs?
I think they're a dangerous team. They're healthy. They have a very good running game. Josh Jacobs is having his best season. Jordan Love has played so much better the last 5 or 6 games than he did earlier in the season, just like last year. He's really rallying at the end here, playing extremely well. The defense is strong. I think they have a legitimate shot at going deep into the playoffs, and as they did last year. And I think that they really have to be concerned, any team that would play them in the first round, because I think the Packers really look like they're hitting on all cylinders at the right time of the year here.
Well, I think what's very interesting is that we talked about last year, Jordan Love went on that massive streak, if we remember, late in the season, like the second half of the season, and was absolutely on point, spot on, touchdown-interception ratio. So I want to actually bring up the last few games here, because I think it's important to look at. So let's go. From week 10 to now, so the last 6 games, Jordan Love is completing over 66% of his throws. He's averaging 219 yards per game, 9 touchdowns, 1 pick, a passer rating of 113.8. Now, it's not the insane 18 touchdowns to 1 pick to close out the last 10 games, I believe. Actually, I think that was just, the last 10 games. But he's still, kind of along that efficient clip of low turnovers and high efficiency because, at the beginning of the season, he was throwing a pick essentially every single game, if not multiple picks per game. I mean, before this point, he was on a streak of every single game he played up until week 10, actually. That's when the streak ended, of having at least 1 pick in every game. So he was turning the ball over at an insane rate. He even had a 3-interception game in the 2-point loss to Minnesota. But this is kind of what the Packers need Jordan Love to be. I think the addition of Josh Jacobs is an incredible pickup because he is having a tremendous season, a great addition to the Packers. And we question, why would you give up? Why would you take a cap hit for Aaron Jones to get Josh Jacobs? And I could kind of see why they did it now. I think it was honestly a great move. And we have to remember A.J. Dillon, the running back 2, he was injured all season. And yet you come in and Emmanuel Wilson, I want to make sure, the backup running back for the Packers, he's also playing surprisingly well. He's playing, I think, better than what people expected from a backup running back. So this Packers team is very, very good. Also, we open up the season with Xavier McKinney having a pick in every single game. And I've said this every time we talk about the Packers or even the Giants. Wouldn't the Giants love to have Xavier McKinney and actually pay him instead of wasting money on Daniel Jones? So that's a big thing. So the defense, by the way, since week 12, they've had at least 1 takeaway in every single game. So their defense is taking the ball away. Jordan Love's not turning the ball over. This is a perfect recipe for success. The defense right now is 7th in total defense. They have the 6th best scoring defense in the league. Jordan Love has led the 4th best total offense in the league. So this team is a top 5 team in the NFL currently, and it's showing week in, week out. First shutout of the NFL season, which was actually up to this point a record for any team not being shut out. And it was kind of looking like maybe that's not going to happen this year, but the Packers were able to do it against the Saints team that is terrible.
Oh, man, I watched Spencer Rattler. I've seen him in a couple of games, 2 or 3 games now. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I'm sorry. He makes some terrible decisions out there. He lets himself get sacked way behind the line instead of throwing the ball away. He turns the ball over. He's 15 of 30, 153 yards and an interception last night. He was the leading rusher, 5 rushes, 28 yards. I mean, they're missing a lot of pieces, the Saints, right?
Alvin Kamara's gone.
Alvin Kamara's out.
Olave.
And Lave is out. So, they only got less than 200 yards last night, 4 of 11 on third down. He was sacked 3 times. Time of possession only 22 minutes in the game.
Yep.
So they're terrible, and I don't know what they're going to do about quarterback next year. You think
Bring back Derek Carr?
Derek Carr again? I'm not so
know.
sure. I mean, he played this coach that they brought in after they fired Green. He was 3-1 when Carr played. So that's something they could look at and say, well, do we want to bring him back? And let
Are you talking
him,
about Dennis Allen?
No, I'm sorry, Dennis Allen that they let go,
Yeah.
right? This guy that's there now.
Darren Rizzi.
Yeah, he's done well when Derek Carr was able to play. They were 3-1. So maybe they give him a chance. I don't know. And we'll have to decide whether they're going to stick with Derek Carr.
I think, and this is going into the same kind of argument with the Bears, or even the Jets. You have to look at not only the roster, but the team situation, the financial situation. They're in cap hell. They've been in cap hell for several seasons now, where there's really no cap relief until like 3 years from now. So the ability to generate a roster like the Eagles, like the 49ers, like the Lions, you look at any big-time roster, and you say, well, how the hell do they construct that? Really great cap management. The Saints physically can't do that just because I think they're what? I think going into this next season, they're $90 million over the cap. I'll try to get a number by the end of the show, but going into next season, they just have no cap space whatsoever. So the ability to sign massive players is essentially zero. You're going to need to keep drafting and hope you hit. And I'll give you the exact cap space for 2025. The Saints are negative $78 million. That's how much cap space they have. But it's been a consistent thing where they just haven't been able to move any funds anywhere because of the fact they've signed these massive contracts that don't make any sense, that have no relief for the team at all. So when it comes to Saints, they're a bad franchise, poorly run in my opinion. Offense is a complete mess. Derek Carr is hit or miss, and mostly miss. But when it comes to Packers, how far can they go? Why can't they repeat where they were just at and maybe push it a game or two, which would mean the Super Bowl if they push it 2 games from where they were? Because Jordan Love outplayed Brock Purdy in the divisional game. That I have no doubt in my mind. Brock Purdy had 2 opportunities to maybe get pick 6, at least 2 picks, and they dropped them. Darnell Savage dropped what could have been a pick 6, and there was another one later on in the game which also could have been picked off. Yeah. Jordan Love played very well in the rain.
Yeah.
So, and especially because the 49ers are gone. They're out of the playoffs right now. So you're actually going up, and I want to take a look at the playoff bracket right now.
Who are the Bears? I mean, who would
currently
the Packers
the Packers would currently play the Los Angeles Rams, and I have no doubt in my mind they would make Matt Stafford pay. I think I would pick the Packers in that game. Now the Rams would probably be favored in that game. That's my
the Rams.
Guess.
You think would be?
I think the Rams would be favored.
So.
It would be like a 1.5. That's what my guess would be because they would be the home team in a playoff game. So home teams normally start -3, which would technically mean neutral field. Packers would be up 1.5 points technically. So for me, I would pick the Packers money line straight up. Just give me the Packers in that one. Because I think that the Rams would have an issue stopping Josh Jacobs. And then, because last night, how many players did we see open? We saw Christian Watson open for several yards. Jaden Reed had a great game.
Wide open.
Like you look anywhere and you're like, oh my God, how are these guys so wide open? Tight ends being wide open. So I think the Packers are a very unique team. They're an extremely young team, and they don't really have like an X factor. Wide out or even slot. They don't have a wide receiver who's an X factor. Their X factor is their quarterback and their running back.
Yeah.
And then their defense is a massive support of that because they just, like I just mentioned,
they're the youngest team in the NFL.
Right.
Still.
And they were last year, and they were playing with a confidence and a maturity level that's like these guys. It's what their average roster age is 25 years old, and they're playing at this high of a clip.
I think one other factor is their coaching.
I was going to say that's Matt LaFleur did it. Yeah. He's done
an excellent job.
And we have to realize the argument was Rodgers McCarthy, then it was Rodgers LaFleur. Now we realize that Matt LaFleur was a massive part of why the Packers kept being 13-3 or 13-4. It's because Matt LaFleur's scheming, Matt LaFleur's play calling, Matt LaFleur's coaching has been incredible, and then Jordan Love sitting behind Rodgers for a number of years and then coming in and people are like, well, he came in that one game where Rodgers had COVID and he didn't look that great against Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's like, well, it was a COVID year, and you're going up against what people are calling already the greatest quarterback of all time. Cut the kid a little bit of slack there. He didn't play that badly. He didn't play great, but he didn't play that badly. And then he comes in and makes the divisional round in his first year starting. It's like, yeah, okay, this is great. The coaching's great. He's playing at a very nice level. And in this season, it's kind of more of the same. You start off with a lot of turnovers, but also a lot of touchdowns, and then you mellow it out a little bit. You get rid of the turnovers. You also drop a little bit in the touchdown department because you're playing a little bit safer with the football. But then you have a running back who has double-digit touchdowns, and also he has, 1,200 yards? 1,300 yards? I get the number right. 1,216 yards. So I think the Packers will get to at least the divisional, if not the NFC Championship game. I could definitely see Lions-Packers championship game. I want to see if that's even, is that plausible?
Yeah, it could be. Right?
It could be if the Commanders somehow upset the Philadelphia Eagles. Otherwise, the Packers and the Lions would play in the divisional. I would also be. I would take the Lions in that regard. I would give you the Lions against the Green Bay Packers.
Playoffs should be really interesting this year.
I feel like the NFC is much more entertaining than the AFC in my mind. Because we have a bunch of different storylines. It's like, is Michael Penix going to be the quarterback of the Falcons if they make it, or is Tampa going to reclaim their throne at the NFC North? Then, how will the Commanders, pull off a shocking upset over the Eagles? Or will the Eagles, rebound from their playoff loss last year when they get decimated by Tampa?
Depends on Jalen Hurts. How bad is Jalen Hurts hurt?
He has a concussion right now, so who knows? But are the Vikings frauds? Like there's a bunch of storylines. In the AFC, it's like, okay, well, the Chiefs have one loss, but they're extremely lucky, so they'll probably find a way to win in the playoffs anyway. The Buffalo Bills are going to win at least one playoff game, if not two, and then they're going to lose to the Chiefs most likely. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens seem like they may take over the division. Is Lamar going to keep sucking in the playoffs like he has? Who knows? The Texans look like not a great team. They'll probably lose in the wild card round. The Broncos, interesting story. They're not true playoff contenders right now. And then the Chargers. Are they going to upset? Are they going to be terrible again? Are they going to find a way to lose in the playoffs again, like they did against the Jaguars a couple years ago? Like, to me, those are interesting stories. It's like, okay, well, the Eagles have chemistry issues, apparently, reportedly. The Falcons have a rookie quarterback starting. It's kind of the same thing with the Broncos. But
I think with the Eagles, it's Hurts. Whether he's going to be out. He should be back by the playoffs, you would think.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Are the Vikings frauds?
I don't think the Vikings beating the Seahawks, to me, said something. I thought that if they were a fraud, they would have lost that game. I think they're for real. And their coach is a pretty impressive guy. He takes quarterbacks that people don't think too much of and turns them into really high-quality guys. I think, look how Kirk Cousins played for him, and look what happened to Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. Look at Sam Darnold. He was nobody. Now he's going to be a top pick by some other team probably. He's going to be in free agency. He's going to get a big contract. So we'll see. I think the Vikings, they lost to the Giants a couple of years ago there, and that was
2022.
Very, very surprising. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we have to remember that Vikings team was 11-0 in one-score games.
Yeah. And
going into the playoffs, you're going against Daniel Jones and get absolutely embarrassed by the Giants.
Yeah.
You know who else has done very well?
I don't think it was embarrassing.
Game?
I mean, there was a close game. Right? It was a last drive where Cousins didn't get the first down. It was
like a 4th and 9, and he threw it 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage.
Still, they were in the game. I don't think it was an embarrassment.
It was an 8-point loss. You give up 31 points to Daniel Jones, where Daniel Jones actually has a great game: 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a pass rating of 114.
$160 million contract.
It did, yeah. That's the craziest part about it. He also had 78 rushing yards, so he had 379 total yards. But there we go. Give me the Packers. They'll probably make, depending on who they play, I think they can make the NFC Championship.
Who do you like in tomorrow's games?
Give me the Chiefs. They'll find a way to win somehow, like they always do, and give me the Ravens. The Texans are in a massive slump. I don't trust them. I love C.J. Stroud because I thought he deserved to be the number 1 overall pick.
You think the Chiefs and Ravens will cover? It's -3 for the Chiefs and -5.5 for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think both teams will cover.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Chiefs win 21-17. I think the Ravens win 30-24. Well, all these teams have clinched a playoff spot. It's just a matter of the seeding.
It's seeding.
But that's important. So I think these games will be
the
good.
Steelers right now, they're holding on for dear life to that number 3
Is there a
seed.
Thursday game this week?
Yes, that's Seahawks-Bears.
Okay, I got the Seahawks.
Seahawks as well, yeah.
And whatever the point spread is, I got the Seahawks covering it.
Yeah, I can give it to you in 2 seconds. The point spread's -3.5 on the road. Yeah, give it to me. Seahawks -3.5. There we go. All right, well, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone out
Happy
there.
Hanukkah.
We appreciate tuning in for this Christmas Eve show, so we hope you all have a happy holiday season. We'll be back Friday to discuss these games tomorrow and on Thursday, as well as week 17 already. We are 2 weeks out from ending the regular season, which is crazy to think.
Been an interesting season.
Playoffs are less than a month away, which is absurd in my mind. That's great. The season flew by. But yeah, we'll see you guys Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, normal time, right here on YouTube.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Night, Grandpa.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift